some people that I interview where it's just a joy to have, and it's someone that I've known for a while now, and we're finally getting this interview completed. And I think timing is everything. And it is my honor today to have Morenike Oyenusi on as a guest on my podcast here on the Power Transformation Podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be on your podcast today.
Thank you. I'm excited to have you because you have such an incredible life journey, testimony, so much that you have experienced and overcome that's led to the work that you're doing today. And before we get started on that, I always like to just start with a nice, lighthearted icebreaker question so that we can get to know you a bit more. I know that you live such a very hectic, busy, productive life with so many different things and tasks and responsibilities. But my question for you, Morenike, is whenever you have downtime, what do you like to do in terms of hobbies? What are some of your hobbies that you like?
I love to read. So that's the first thing I do. And I read every evening, at least. Always have about 4 different books, to be honest, that I'm reading. Right now, I'm reading a book of poetry, as well as I'm reading a fiction book. And then I'm also reading a non-fiction book. And there's a 4th one. Yeah, there are actually 2 non-fiction books I'm reading right now. So it just gives me such pleasure. And, at the end of the day, it helps me to unwind and transports me to another world. And, it's lovely. And then the second thing is I love to travel. Any opportunity I get, I travel. So those are my 2 main hobbies.
Is reading a joy that you've had ever since you were a child, or did that passion come later in life?
Ever since I was a child, as
Oh.
far as I can remember, I've been reading. And my mom was also an avid reader, and she greatly encouraged me to read. I mean, I don't know, I think I had the love of reading anyway, either way, but then she encouraged me by buying me lots of books, and then she had a mighty library herself. And not only did I read the books that she got me or that I chose, but I also read some of the books in her library.
And reading not only opens us to so many worlds, but it gives us so many more ideas. It gives us a different way of thinking, whether it's nonfiction or fiction. And it's absolutely beautiful. And we are going to talk more about your own journey with reading that led into writing and so much more. But before we touch on that, this is a question that I have, and you can answer it any way that you want. But how would you answer this? Who is Morenike Oyenusi?
So Morenike Oyenusi is first and foremost a child of the Most High God. And, so that defines my identity. Everything I do is really, the ultimate goal is to please God, and I have that wonderful relationship with him. But I'm just really passionate about my family, my children, my loved ones, my friends. I'm passionate about making a difference in the world, making a difference even amongst my children, my immediate family, my companions, my friends, and in the community. And it's something I thrive on, to be able to have somebody approach me and say, hey, what do you think of this? Or I need advice on this. And to be able to lead them in the right direction, and then to see the end results really gives me great joy. So I'm just really passionate about changing lives and being there for people, and being there to help them, and being somebody that they can rely upon and and trust.
Yes.
And I, my apart from my faith, my just the things that give me joy are simple. Reading, we mentioned travel, eating out with my family. I love being in company. I'm actually quite shy, but I am. People don't really know that, because I've overcome that shyness. But I like being with people.
Wow, I never would have guessed you to be shy. So thank you for saying that. I think, could it be something about once you warm up to a person, you
Yes.
open up a bit more? Yeah.
I
Oh,
think
wow.
so. I think, and
Uh-huh.
it's something I had to pray about as well. As a child, I was very shy, and even as a young adult, I remember I was working with this law firm in Nigeria, and I was the attorney responsible for managing the office and managing the lawyers, and we had this anniversary. Party that I helped organize to
Mhm.
celebrate the anniversary of the firm. And the partner has said to me that I would have to make a speech. And I said, oh my gosh, no way, please. I'm not making a speech. I mean, there's just no, I mean, I just couldn't visualize me going to talk in front of people. And he said, okay, no problem. And then the day of the event, you can't believe he called me out and he said, oh, so Morenike Oyenusi, I was Morenike Yuba at the time. She's going
Mhm.
to, make a speech. And I was so stunned. But I think after that experience, I said, something told me that I was going to be doing some public speaking in the future. So I had to really pray about it to have the ability to speak in front of people.
Mhm.
So I mean, I could speak on a one-on-one basis, but then to get in front of a crowd and address people, I just could never do that. But I prayed, and God gave me he answered my prayers.
Hmm. That is quite remarkable. And, there's such power in our words and power in speaking. And I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I didn't go into depth. But there's power even in you because you are a published author, amongst other things. So, if you could describe or tell someone what it is that you do professionally, what would you say?
I would say I'm a writer, I'm a publisher, and I'm also an attorney. Then I
Mm,
would also add, if pressed, that I'm also a minister in my church, and I'm a mother of the mother of three wonderful children. So that's what
mm.
I would say.
Indeed. And all of those roles have played their part in your life, specifically when it comes to the writing aspect of things. And so, what I want to do is get into the heart and the core of our message. Because one thing that speaks volumes about you are that you are an overcomer, you are more conqueror, you have experienced so much in life that could have left people in a state of defeat or despair, but you chose otherwise. And so let's start that journey of taking us back. Just tell us a bit about your upbringing, about your childhood, and actually, out of curiosity, what led you down the path of even becoming an attorney?
So as a child, I really had the most idyllic childhood. I
Mm,
didn't really, I mean, it was just really lovely. I didn't have anything to worry about. I had two wonderful parents who brought me up, and I had a brother. And I was born in Lagos, Nigeria, but I grew up. We spent several years on the university campus in a town called Ife, and it was just wonderful. We were free to roam around and be with friends, and then it wasn't dangerous, so we could walk to our friends' houses even at a very young age. It was fantastic. My parents gave us everything we wanted because
mm,
every opportunity. I ended up going to boarding school in England because my parents wanted the best for me. I went to university in England. The parents, again, it was my parents who made sure that I had the best opportunity, and so did my brother. So I guess my challenges began to came at a later age. And but
mhm.
by the grace of God, I was able to overcome. I've been able to overcome each one. But as
Yeah.
far as writing is concerned, or being you asked whether why I decided to become a lawyer. Now that's
Yes.
kind of interesting because I didn't think I was going to become a lawyer. My mother was a lawyer, and
Oh.
she was trained as a lawyer. She became a barrister in England, actually, at the Inns of Court in London. But she only practiced for a couple of years. And in the years that we were growing up, she now decided she was going to um, pursue research. So she did a history degree, and then she did a master's in librarianship studies. And so she kind of, changed her path. So
Hmm.
becoming a lawyer never occurred to me. I knew the things I liked. I liked reading, and I liked writing, and I liked languages. So when I went to boarding school in England, I thought, well, I'd love to do something with languages. And I went to the career person at our school and I said, advise me, this is what I want to do. And, she said, well, maybe you should consider hotel management. And I said, that's not what I was asking. I don't want to
Mm.
go into hotel management. I want to do something with languages, something that would be a profession. And she really wasn't of much use in the advice. And then one day I thought, you know
Mm.
what? I'm going to have a profession and I can always read, I can always write, but I'm going to become a lawyer. And so I decided to apply for law, but I applied for law with French because I still wanted to pursue languages as well. So I thought,
Yes.
wonderful combination to have a profession that will make sure I don't starve, as well as do other things, would be to do law with French. But I ended up being admitted at the University of London to read law. And it was the best decision of my life. I just really took to law like anything. Even I was
Wow.
surprised by how much I just really thrived on reading law, studying law, then becoming a lawyer.
Mm. And just the fact that you said that you were very shy
Mm-hmm.
to be a lawyer, of course, there are all types of lawyers out there, but just the amount of dedication it has to go into the research, into the writing, into even presenting your cases, regardless of what kind. But what type of law were you attracted to, and what type of law did you or do you practice?
Interestingly enough, I started off with litigation,
Oh.
which you would think, well, again, being in nature a shy person, that isn't what I want to do. But I thought, well, I'd like to go to court. And so in my first year of practice, I would actually strive to get cases assigned to me so that I would go to court. And for
Mm.
whatever reason, when I was addressing the judge, all the shyness went away. I could confidently speak and
Mhm.
address the judge, and then I was fine. But after a couple of years of that, then I decided I was going to do something else. I now veered into transactions, preparing agreements and advising
Mhm.
people and advising companies and banks and um, non-profit organizations. I was doing all
Mhm.
that in Lagos as I was practicing in a law firm. And, so I kind of transitioned from doing litigation into being a transactional lawyer. And ever since then, I've been a transactional lawyer. When I moved to the United States, I continued with transactions, real
Mhm.
estate, and other agreements. My first job was with the Rouse Company, the old Rouse Company in Columbia, Maryland. And then I moved to the Office of the Attorney General, representing the Maryland Port Administration. And so there I had a combination of real estate and maritime law. And it was fantastic. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
so I had some litigation to handle whilst I was there, but it was
Mhm.
mainly transactional. And I
Mhm.
think that's the kind of lawyer, to cut a long story short, that's the kind of lawyer I am. I'm a transactional lawyer. I
Mhm.
give advice, I prepare agreements, I advise people on how to structure their deals. I can think through complex issues. If a client has something that they want to try and achieve, I can break it down into little bits and pieces and then
Mhm.
advise on the different components that go into making that transaction successful. And then I can then, prepare agreements for the different pieces of the transaction to make the agreement succeed. And in connection with that, I have to do a lot of negotiation. That
Mhm.
means calling people, lawyers on the other side, and negotiating and talking with them and working through agreements to get deals done for our clients. And, sometimes that's quite adversarial, but my nature is that I like to bring people together. So I always
Yeah.
kind of look at the way, how can we achieve this? How can this be a win-win situation for both parties? And I'm pleased to say that ultimately that's what we usually achieve, something that both parties are fine with, are comfortable with, and are happy with. And
Mhm.
that's the person I am. That's the kind of law that I practice.
And I'm glad that you really explained that for us because the reason behind focusing on the law aspect of it is the fact that when you are in that role, or especially when in your earlier years, when you started in that role, there is so much in detail to it. And that's ironic that you weren't shy when you had to present in court, when you had to argue your case in court. But it also shows that one of the purposes of a lawyer, depending on what side of the fence you're on, lawyers are there to really advocate and to help companies or people overcome situations, whether they're good, bad, indifferent, neutral, is that whole aspect of that. You work you work tirelessly to uphold the law and to give justice in any form, whether it's through real estate transactions, whether it's through a civil or criminal case. It doesn't matter the type of law practice. What matters is the core heart of why you're practicing law and you're upholding them. And at the end of the day, somebody goes home happier or more at peace and at ease. And so, in alignment with that, as you're working toward that law career, tell us more so about what was happening in your personal life at the time. Did you find a husband? Did you choose to just focus on your job? So let's start talking about how you went from being this lawyer to now you're a mom of three. Tell us about that journey on how you met your husband.
So I met my late husband.
Mhm.
He unfortunately died in 2021, but
Mm.
I met him in Nigeria actually. So what happened
Oh.
was, yes, he was living in the United States and I was in Nigeria, and he was visiting and he was friends with one of the two partners at my law firm. So he was very close. His family they were very close to the partner at my law firm and his family. And I guess my husband to be had expressed that he would like to meet somebody. So one day the partner came to me and said, "Would you like to meet somebody?" And I said, "Yeah, who's this person?" And then he said, "Well, we have this family friend who's visiting from the States and he'd like to meet somebody." So I said, "Okay, yeah, sure." So gave him my number, and Tunji, my late husband, called me, and then he said, "Well, what should we do?" So I said, "Well, this restaurant around the corner from our law firm. It's called Double Four." And he said,
Mhm.
"Okay, I'll come and take you to lunch." So he came and he came and took me to lunch.
Oh,
And
wow.
that was in we met in January of that year, and in April we got engaged and we were
Y'all
married.
wasted no time. Look at that. The
Yeah,
heart knows, honey, doesn't
right,
it? See?
right.
The heart knows. Tell me about him. What kind of person was he? Describe who your late husband was.
So the first word that comes to mind is bubbly. You know, the
Mm,
soul of the party, somebody who always made you laugh, who always, knew the right thing to do, he was always, and he was the kind of person who always asked, he was always concerned about what you were going through, if you needed
mm,
help, he was empathetic that way. So he kind of attracted people. I remember when he died and at the funeral, people were saying, "Oh my goodness, your husband was always there for me and always,
mm,
always knew what to say and always what to advise." But he was very jovial. He was
mhm.
jovial and, just a happy person.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And during that time, in thinking about how you went from this shy girl to a lawyer, and now, well, now in the timeline of our, interview, you're a wife. And so you've made this transformative move. Tell us about the experience of just not only being a wife, but what did motherhood do for you? Did it transform your identity in some way, and how?
So being a wife initially was quite challenging, and I guess that's to be expected when you've met somebody and you haven't really dated for that long, and then you
Hmm.
get married. So that was challenging, but but we worked through our issues, and then our first son was born, and then we had two daughters, and it just really motherhood just transforms you.
Mm,
There you are, you don't you have a husband that you're caring for, but it's just the two of you, and then you have a baby, and then it's just it's just the most incredible thing, because
mm.
having this little one to care for, and
Wow.
some and somebody who loves you unconditionally, because children come, they love you unconditionally, you're their mommy, and they look up to you, and they love you, and you care for them, and you have this relationship, and it just transforms you from being
Hmm.
in this person into a mother. I mean, being a mother is a whole wonderful identity, and I guess motherhood comes in different forms. Sometimes you don't have your own natural children, but you have children that you care for. But it's
Yeah.
just the most fantastic experience. And so it
Mm,
opens your world. It opens your world to, you're responsible for somebody else or other people, and you you're thinking more about them than about you. So in a sense, you might actually set yourself aside a bit just to make sure that you
mm,
care for them, and so you're wearing these different hats. You're a lawyer, you're a mother, you're a friend, you're a companion, you're a wife, but you're also a mother. But I think the motherhood part of it is just, it's just so, I would never,
mm,
never, it's just so, it's an essential part. Let's put it that way.
mm,
It's an essential part of my identity because it never goes away. You're always a mother.
hmm. And it made me think about my own mom. I something happened the other day where I did. Oh, my ear was itching. So I
Hmm.
was trying to scratch my ear, and I'm in my 40s, and my mom said, "You okay? Is everything okay with your ear?" I said, "Mom, my ear's itchy."
Yeah,
Okay, I just wanted to check in.
yeah,
I
yeah,
said, "Mommy," I said, "Mom," I said, "Can you put off your mom's hat sometimes?" She said, "No, you can
yeah.
never take off your mom's hat." And so I just laughed at that. And I bring this up for the fact that here you were in that time being a wife, being a mom, and just the fact that you touched about how even in your marriage, early on, you had to find your rhythm and your flow and your overcoming the challenges. And so you're in that sweet spot, in that good space, knowing that the rhythm and the flow is happening. You have your career, you have your family, God has and never will leave you.
Mm.
Things couldn't be going better. But take us now to a slight shift into the day because you did share that he's your late husband. And I spoke about identity from one aspect, but share with us, take us to that day of your husband's transition, his death. Take us there.
So, before he died, he had been in hospital for a few
Mm,
weeks, and so he had complications from heart failure, and but I never accepted that he was going to die.
mhm,
I just really had this faith that he wasn't going to die, he was going to survive, and I just kept saying that. You talked about the power of words
mhm.
earlier on. I kept saying, no, he's not going to die, he's going to live. It's going to live to give glory to God in the land of the living. And people would, I kept reassuring my children, and then the doctors would say things like, oh, you have to prepare for your husband's death. And I would say, no,
Mm,
it's not going to die. In fact, eventually I told the social worker to tell them to stop calling me and telling me every time they called that he was going to die. But anyway, so the day he died, the day before he died, we had, my daughter and I had gone to hospital to see him, and we spent time with him. And I remember that it was very late. It was about going on midnight. And
mm,
I said, well, I said to my daughter, we should leave now. And honestly, she didn't want to leave. She said, can we stay? And I said, it's, really late, but we'll come back tomorrow. And then we went home. And then I had actually, during that time, I was actually sleeping in her bed, just for the comfort and the care, and just for us to, for the companionship, because it was quite a challenging period. And so I remember waking up and looking at my phone, and I had like 7 missed calls from the same number.
oh,
And I said to my daughter, I said, look at this, there's 7 missed calls. And she said, oh, I'm really scared. I said, I'm really scared too. And then I called back and they said your husband has passed away. And
mm,
yeah, so it
mm,
was challenging. It really was,
mm.
because again, I was praying that that would not be the result. Before he died, the day before, he wasn't he was sleeping and he wasn't communicating or responding to us,
Wow.
and but I was talking to him, and daughter was talking to him as well, but he wasn't responding. And but he was obviously alive, breathing, but he just don't know whether he could hear us or not.
Mm,
And we told him, that we loved him, and we're waiting for him to come back and come home. And and then he didn't.
Mm.
So,
As a woman of faith and as
mhm.
a woman of God, and I am too, sometimes people will see those of us who are in Christ and think that, oh, because God's on our side, yes, we have the victory, but we still go through human emotions.
Yes.
How was your faith expanded? Or, no, no, no. I know how I want to ask this. In the days subsequent to your husband's passing, describe the role that faith played in your journey because now here you were a single mother, a widow. How did faith play its part, and how did faith eventually lead you to becoming an overcomer, even in that situation? So take us on that path of what you experienced during that time, and how in the world did you seemingly hold on to your faith?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the background of this is I think I may have mentioned to you. So my husband died in June 2021, but the year before I'd, lost my parents in April
Mhm.
2020, and then my brother, my only brother, in October 2020. And so so we'd already gone
So,
through.
excuse me, I knew that you had lost your parents, but you lost them at the same time or in
Yes,
the
I lost my
same month?
brother 6 months later in October 2020.
Oh my
And
goodness.
um, and then and I would say surely my husband wasn't going to die too. I mean, surely not, because
Mhm.
even my parents and my brother, I, had faith that they wouldn't. My brother's was very sudden. I wasn't expect. It wasn't. We're not expecting it at all. But with my especially my mom, we'd had faith. We'd had faith that she was going to survive, that she was going to live, and I kept proclaiming that, you know, and then they didn't live. They didn't
Mhm.
survive, and they died. And
Mhm.
with my husband, I said, surely that's not going to happen. But it did happen. But what people tell you is like when you lose loved ones, you shouldn't question God, or it's not that you don't. I think it's not that you don't question God, but you have a conversation and try to understand, you know, what's going on,
Mhm.
and you don't necessarily get the answers. But the point is that throughout every adversity like that, you know that God is on your side, and I never doubted that regardless of
Mhm.
all the four tragedies, I never doubted that God loved
Mhm.
me and my children, that He loved us, that He was always going to be with us, because we're not promised lack of adversity or lack of difficulty or lack of
Mhm.
challenge. The Bible says that if you walk through water, you will not drown. If you walk
Yes.
through fire, you will not be burnt. And Jesus said, in this world you have many troubles, but take heart, I've overcome
Uh, uh-huh.
and he says,
Yeah,
my peace I leave with you. My
that's
peace I give,
right.
not as the world gives, but I leave you peace. So it's a different kind of peace. So I just knew without a doubt that God was with me. But I had to find my way through this journey. And emotionally it was quite a journey. But what I did, I had to keep encouraging myself,
Mm-hmm.
how David, it says in the Bible that David encouraged himself in the Lord, after his wife and his children and his community members had been captured in battle. He encouraged himself, and so that's what I had to do on a day by day basis, just keep
Mm,
encouraging myself. And then I had community around me as well, and so that helped. I had cousins come. I had my children. Thank God, my children
mm,
were there. So just as I was there for them, they were there for me. But it was just taking one day at a time, one at a time, and just not try not to focus on the bigger future, but just
mm-hmm.
how do I get through today? So
Mm-hmm.
that's what helped me. And reading the word. In fact, one thing that really helped me, I was reading, there's this Bible in 1 year program. There are many Bible in 1 year programs,
Mm-hmm.
but there's this particular one. He's an English pastor, and it's a Bible in 1 year thing that he does. It's an audio recording, and I did that. I just for that 1 year I was
Wow.
just listening, and that just really the fact that I could turn that on and listen to that was in itself something to look forward to. In Despite
Hmm.
all the gloom and everything, was something to hold on to and look forward to. And so those are the little things that you do to keep yourself going. Okay, yes, you've lost your loved ones or you are in this adversity, but you know that there's a future for you. There's a hope and a future
That's right.
that, make the best of every little thing that you have, whether it's listening to your Bible on tape or reading a book, because I will still read, every evening, read a book or, take a walk or go out with friends or, go out to lunch with them or even sitting down. I will sit down on the sofa with my children, my three children, we just cuddle together and watch a movie together.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. And hearing this, that is so key is that yes, Jesus does tell us, he promises us that we gonna have that trouble, but I love when he tells us, but he has overcome the world. And it gives us the opportunity to keep moving forward and pressing forward. But what if there's a person out there who is just really going through and they say, my faith has been firm for a long time, but I'm just really going through the ringer and going through the wire right now, and I don't know how much longer I can hold out. What do you tell them to encourage them that they too can come out victoriously from their situations?
So I tell them exactly what I've told you, that no matter how bleak things seem, God is there and you will get through. But I also
Mhm.
encourage them to talk to people,
Mhm.
because you can't carry this alone,
Mhm.
especially people of the Christian faith. People, reach out to people. Don't hide your emotions. Don't pretend everything is okay. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to reach out to someone and say, hey, I'm really sad, and we
Mhm.
talk. So I encourage that. And, obviously the other way around, people should reach out to people who are going through stuff. Don't just assume that they're okay or assume that they don't want you to call or
Yeah.
assume that you don't be kind of shy or put off by, because sometimes someone is going through something, you just don't know what to say to them. Don't let that
Uh-huh.
put you off. You reach out all the
Mhm.
same. But if somebody is going through something, I would say, call me at any time. Let's talk. Reach out to people.
Mhm.
Talk about it. Don't just do this on your own. Talk about it. And obviously
Mhm.
pray and trust in God, that everything will be okay, because the Bible promises that everything will be okay. And then, look at people's testimonies as well
Yes.
of adversity and overcoming adversity. I think that really helps, because you know that if somebody has done that and gone through that and overcome that, then you can do so as well.
And what I love about your journey, Morenike, is that you took your pain and transformed it into purpose. Yes, you've grieved and had to do what you needed to do in order to continue to move forward. And having your children there, they automatically became your everything because you had to make certain that they were fine. But you could have kept it right there. And I think what's so incredible about you as an overcomer is that you wanted to spread awareness and love even beyond yourself. And that led you to writing books and becoming a writer. Take us on that path as to what made you decide one of these days that you wanted to go ahead and write a book. You could have kept that to yourself, but what was that catalyst, and how has writing allowed you to get your message out that is really transforming people's lives?
So to be honest, I'd already by the time I experienced the first loss, I'd already more or less finished the manuscript of my first book,
Mm.
which I'd been working on for about 14 years. Yeah,
Oh.
it took me, I began to write it when, after we had our third child, I began to write it, and I really strongly wanted to write it so that they would, the stories were for them and they were for other children. And the year that, the month that my parents died, I'd actually already decided I was going to, I'd, I'd already decided I was going to set up my own publishing entity,
Mm.
which I was going to use to publish my books, but also on my book, because there was only one book, and other people's books at the same time, because the Lord had given me a vision that I should set up this company, not only to publish this one book, but also to be able to publish other people's books as well and give
Mm-hmm.
them an opportunity to have their books published. So that and then when my parents died in April 2020, on April 28th, 2020, was the day I set up the company. And
Wow.
that year in August also is
Mm-hmm.
when I published the first book. I had to
Mm-hmm.
fundraise for the first book and raise enough funds to publish that. But the second book, I can say, directly derived from my experience with loss. The second book, The Shepherd's Care, was a book that I wrote because of the care that my pastor gave me after I lost my parents.
Oh, how lovely.
Yeah, I love
Wow.
my parents, and he would call and say things like, "Have you eaten today? What have you eaten?"
Mm.
Just very detailed like that. And then I would tell him, and then he would call the following day and check on me again. And it suddenly just brought, it really, he embodied the love of Christ. When
Yeah.
Jesus says that, he tells Peter to feed his sheep, and he tells him
Mm-hmm.
three times, "Feed my sheep," or "Take care of my sheep." I realized that my pastor was in that position as a shepherd to me, not just
Mm-hmm.
as a shepherd, my going to church and then my hearing the word, but as a shepherd actually really caring for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, how can I express this about the love of God to little children? And that will help them as well. And so I wrote The Shepherd's Care about this little girl, Lydia, who suddenly loses her dad. She's 6 years old, and then she suddenly loses her dad. But God sends different people to help her in that process. And each of them was a shepherd. Each of
Wow.
them, in the little help that they gave, in the comfort that they gave, whether it was a teacher, telling her, "Oh, you forgot your homework, don't worry, bring it tomorrow, it's going to be okay." Or Lydia going to her friend's birthday party, and then her friend gives her a gift. Even though it's her
Mm-hmm.
birthday party, she gives Lydia a gift, that sort of thing. I thought, this is the love of Christ. This is what when God says, "Feed my sheep," this is what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And when we do that, this little girl, with all these helpers, she had comfort, and then she was able to help somebody else at the end. So that was so that drove my purpose. My purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't think of it the way you said that. Oh, drove me to kind
Mm-hmm.
of fulfill my purpose or to follow my purpose. It was just something that happened in the place that I was. I'm like, okay, I'm going to write this book. But then when I think about it, I think, wow, this is really serving a purpose. I
Yes.
remember about a year ago, I was at an author event, and I had done a reading of The Shepherd's Care. And then about an hour later, somebody came to my table and said, "Oh,
Wow.
I wasn't at the reading, but somebody just told me about it, and I would like to buy the book." And I said, "Yeah, yeah, it's the book." And she said, "Oh, I know this little boy who just lost his parents. His
Oh.
parents last month in the same month. And that's why I'm buying
Oh.
the book for him." And I thought, oh my goodness, if only it was to help that little boy, one little boy.
Yeah.
That is the reason I wrote this book. That is my purpose, to spread encouragement, to help other people. Regardless of what I'm going through, I'm there to help other people, help little children,
Mm-hmm.
be themselves, discover hope, be encouraged, even just enjoy the book. Even that in itself, they're enjoying the book is a purpose.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's really key
Yeah.
because you never know who needs a book like that. And with children, especially grief, it's hard enough at times for adults dealing with grief, but children with grief, sometimes it can be uncomfortable explaining to them that their loved one isn't coming back, or we're too busy navigating our own grief that some people lose sight of the children who have been most affected. And you are doing that through your book as well as through this whole meaning behind it. Is that, if I'm not mistaken, didn't you tell me that the first book is loosely based, in terms of the character, was loosely based on you as a girl back home,
Correct.
correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Wow, wow. And so I think that is totally appropriate, because it not only empowers kids, but it also encourages them and gets them to really see life for what it is, to
Mhm,
understand that all living things must die, but
mhm.
also it can give them that hope. And especially us as believers in Jesus Christ, we have hope that we know that although it may hurt that our loved one isn't with us now, we have that hope and that knowing of
Mm-hmm.
realizing that we are going to be with them again. And so you just didn't stop at that first book, but tell us about what led you to write your other book after that, and how is that also affecting the lives of so many people who are reading it?
So I've written two other books since then. The
Yes.
third book is Isaiah and the Orchestra of Sounds. And it's about Isaiah, who's 14 and a half. And he's a high school student. He's very brilliant and he does well. He loves to study and loves to do
Hmm.
well. And suddenly he discovers that there's an orchestra in his right ear. Like literally, there's an orchestra
Oh.
resident there. And he says, Mom, I have an orchestra in my ear. And so in the story, and it's a graphic book,
Mhm.
Isaiah is followed by this orchestra. He can't sleep. When he goes to bed, they're still playing their music.
Uh-huh.
When he brushes his teeth, the sound of the orchestra is amplified. He goes
Wow.
full and he's trying to focus, and the orchestra is playing away in his ear. And he gets his first C plus or something, and he's really upset because he's straight A student, and eventually so his mother takes him to see an ear, nose, and throat doctor, and he gets some relief. Well, they prescribe something for him and eventually gets some relief. But when he goes to church, before this happens, he was thinking, okay, I'm going to pray and this orchestra must leave. So he goes to church and his mother is praying for him and he's prayed. And then he leaves church and the orchestra is still there following
Oh
him.
my goodness.
So
Oh, that's exciting.
yeah, so
That's
it's very,
exciting.
but it's really about tinnitus or tinnitus. It's about, there's this condition where you have ringing in your ears. It's loosely called, but you can actually have different kinds of sounds, ringing, and um I personally have I have I'm challenged with tinnitus, and
Oh,
I express it in the form of ringing, of buzzing, of truck sounds, train
yeah.
sounds, all kinds of sounds. And
Wow.
so
Wow.
the experience that I talk about in that book is really based on my own personal experience of the condition, and
Hmm.
it's really it's to talk about Isaiah's journey in the humorous way, but it's also to teach, to make people become aware of this condition and how loud noise can cause it. That loud
Hmm.
noise, because 20% of people all over the world have tinnitus, and 20%, including children and young adults, and a
Hmm.
lot of the time is caused by hearing loss induced by noise, loud noise. So
Mm.
it's to tell people, be careful, about loud noise. And I've had testimonies from clients and customers who said, oh, I read your book and this really changed my life. It made me understand, what it is that I'm experiencing, or,
Hmm.
my child really enjoyed this and, knows what to do to prevent, to cut down on noise. And it's taught
Wow.
people in different ways, but a lot of people that it's taught are people who are actually experiencing the condition, including
Mhm.
adults, even though it wasn't really it's geared towards ages 10 to 18. But adults
Okay.
read it and they say, oh wow, this has really changed my life, or it's put a name to the emotions that I've been experiencing.
Wow.
And it also has resources in the back that helpful resources for when you might be experiencing an issue with your ears, advices that you should seek help. And
Hmm.
it talks about the different kinds of help that you can get. There's supposed to be no cure for tinnitus, but there are ways that you can, manage it. And sometimes, depending on the cause, it can go away. If you treat the cause, then
Oh.
you can go away. So,
Hmm.
so that's the reason I wrote that. And then the fourth book is The Primary Colors, which kind of is a very, very unusual vision that I received one day about writing this book.
Uh-huh.
The community of primary colors. Um, each person in the community is blue, red, or yellow. Yeah, and
Wow.
so they're living in this community, and then there are rumors that there's a monster coming to town. There's a monster that's been going around the world, and they're worried that the monster is coming to town. And then a strange family moves in, and they're thinking, oh, maybe these are the monsters. and the lead character, his father says, stay away from them, keep away from them, they're probably the
Wow.
monster, so keep away from them. So it's just about how the children in this story navigate that, navigate the suspicion, the bias and the fear and the
Wow.
confusion and how they navigate that and how they're able to overcome that
Mhm.
and make it
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because that is so creative. All of your ideas and your concepts and your books are creative, but that one specifically, um, it can help to show kids especially how we don't have to let differences or things that we don't know change us and it define who we are. And I think that's absolutely brilliant, especially in this day and age.
Yeah.
Kids need that. I see it so much in terms of so many kids that need that guidance, need that encouragement, need that empowerment, need people who aren't going to discard them and leave
Mhm.
them brushed aside. And I like even the whole concept of the, music playing constantly. My mom has constant ringing in her ears and hers buzzes at times, always. And I
Mhm.
can't imagine having that all day, every day. And she does, but she said for her, she's gotten used to it and has gotten adjusted to it. But that is absolutely powerful. And if people want to purchase your books or even to learn more about you, how can they contact you?
So I have a website for my publishing company. It's www.paradiserestoredpublishing.com. So that's www.paradiserestoredpublishing.com. And, they can contact me that way. There's a sign-on form and, my email address is there for
Mhm,
contact. So that's where the books are sold. And yeah, I, love to hear from
mhm.
from people.
Of course. And as we start to come to a close here, Morenike, I have a question that I think can bring a lot of what you do full circle. And it's this, and there might be one more after this. I don't know. But thinking about this concept of overcoming and victory and just all in your life, and that was just the little small bit of your story. We didn't even get into the publishing company and the ministry. There's so much more. I could have you on multiple times. But this is a loaded question. Answer it any way that you like. What does victory look like in your life?
That's a really deep question. Victory means, I think, not letting circumstances overwhelm you or bring you down. I mean,
Mm,
victory means if you have a challenge and you're able to overcome that challenge, what does that result look like? You've overcome the challenge, you have a solution. That's victory.
mm,
But also, you can have victory in the middle of adversity where you're you're living from day to day. You're just not allowing that circumstance
yes.
to overwhelm you. You have hope. Victory means having hope in the middle of adversity
Mm.
and trusting that God, no matter what, will bring you to your desired end.
Mm, that's an entire word, having victory even in the middle of adversity, because that rings true. And there are so many people globally and, of course, in our country who are going through such hardships and adversity. And for some people, they are literally hanging on by a thin thread. It's not even a thick string anymore, it's a thin thread. And I think that people like you are the ones who can bring them that hope, and you're doing it to show them that you can still be victorious even in the midst of your challenges. And as a mother, in what ways do you desire your children to even live this lifestyle of knowing that they are overcomers and that they too can walk in victory regardless of their circumstances?
Yeah, and I hope I'm able to set a good example to them. But that is
Mm,
as a mom, that is my greatest prayer, that they will know that, yes, there are hard times sometimes, but that they
mhm,
do know for a fact that it's going to be okay. And so that they have that to look forward to, and that no matter what, that they're overcomers, that God loves them, that they're bright, they're beautiful, they're strong,
Mm.
you know, they've done so well by the grace of God. So I want them to know, no matter what, don't worry, it's going to be okay. And
Mm.
then likewise, I want them to share that message with other people, with their colleagues, with their friends, you know, and they're already doing that, you know, setting that example for other people as well, so that other people know the truth, which is that they can overcome as well.
Yes, indeed. They definitely can. What has surprised you? This is the last question. What has surprised you the most about yourself post your husband passing away?
That's a good question, Mike. And I'll answer in the way my youngest daughter has said.
Mm-hmm.
That, Mom, you've really come into yourself.
Ooh.
She said, you're really, like, I see your full potential. You're really,
Mm.
what else does she say? That you really, I can see your individuality.
Mm.
You're really strong, but you've come into yourself.
Mm.
I think that's what she tells me. And I see what she means, that I'm my own person, no matter what, I'm my own person. And now people can really see fully who I am.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Power Transformation Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow or subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. It helps us inspire even more listeners. And don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who could use a little power in their transformation. Until next time, keep bouncing back, keep rising, and be good to yourself and to others.